The Fantasy Trio, a group of manga and anime that are based around magical and imaginative worlds. Consisting of Frieren Beyond Journey's End, Delicious in Dungeon, and Witch Hat Atelier, these three formed a trio of manga that have been gaining popularity over the past 3 to 5 years. They represent a group of manga They represent a group of manga that differ from the popular modern isekais of today, with some people vastly preferring this style rather than the available alternatives. This isn't a video to bash either or, you're entitled to whichever one you prefer. I watched Delicious in Dungeon and Frieren last year. I enjoyed both of those and actually made videos on them, links down below, but I wasn't planning on being the last member of the three. Not because of any lack of interest, but because I was unaware it even existed. That is until the trailer for Witch Hat dropped around the second half of 2024. The trailer did a fantastic job of hugging me, putting its release date right on my radar. In the comments, however, there are people who mentioned the fantasy trio. They talked about how refreshing these three were for the fantasy genre. While they aren't the first to do this, they made a name for themselves by being some of the best to do it in the modern anime landscape. It reminded me of the seinen trio of Vinland Saga, Berserk, and Vagabond, so I thought why not finish the triangle? Now here we are. I caught up to the manga and have a lot to say about it. So without further ado, let me introduce you all to the world of Witch Hat Atelier. Let me give you all a quick synopsis of this manga. We're dropped into the story where we follow our main character, Coco. She's a 10-year-old girl who loves magic and is just genuinely a sweetheart. She lives with her mom on a peaceful field of land where they run a small textile shop. The world itself is filled with magic, but to the normal citizenry like Coco's family, they can't cast it themselves. Only the witches can practice it and cast it, but said witches can fashion magical tools that the citizens can utilize throughout their day. So to make it an equivalent exchange, witches can cast magic, but the citizens can practice medicine. I'll explain more on that later. One day, however, a witch shows up to their shop. His name is Kifri and he's there on errands. He's talking to Coco and her mom, giving us some insight on Coco as a character. She's a bright-eyed girl who wants to wield magic but can't because she's not a witch. Meanwhile, a Pegasus carriage breaks down in front of their shop. Kifri offers to fix it while Coco guards him from people's sight. But being young, she takes a peek herself. She sees Kifri drawing magic, learning that magic isn't inherent to the person but created instead. Once he leaves, Coco goes to her room and finds a strange book she owns. A book that an individual gave to her when her and her mother were shopping in the city a long time ago. Copying Kifri, Coco starts casting magic by tracing the lines in the book. Things turn for the worse, however, when the spells backfire and encase Coco's home in stone. The spell caught Coco's mother in the accident as well. Kifri was able to save Coco, but only her. Seeing the damage she caused, Coco, the poor girl, was traumatized by her carelessness. But Kifri managed to settle her down and offered her a place to stay at his atelier. He swears an oath to help Coco find a way to save her mother from this grisly fate while keeping her love for magic alive. And from here onward, Coco will become an apprentice witch. Here we learn that magic isn't given to the normal citizenry because of a pact made by witches of old. Witches can't let people see them casting magic or else the pact is violated. A witch can't learn medicine or else the pact is violated. A witch can't cast forbidden spells or else the pact is violated. This pact is why only citizens can practice medicine but witches can't, from what I mentioned earlier. All of these laws are in place because there was a great war before these laws were practiced. People who actively break these laws are known as brimhats. These people are seen as criminals and are scorned for their flagrant use of these spells. We'll learn more about these laws and how they're enforced later on. At the atelier, we meet Kifri's other apprentices, Hetia, Rike, and Agate. We also have Orugio, and forgive me if I'm saying that wrong, but he's an overseer and he's Kifri's best friend. Consider him a second master. We see Coco learn the basics of magic and how creative she truly is. She gets closer to her companions and meets new friends along the way. Trouble does come up from time to time, which tests Coco's resolve, ingenuity, and trust in others. The Silver Eye Procession is an amazing example of all three. I'm not gonna go into the arcs, the Knights of Morales, the Wise, or anything else because if you're interested, I don't want to spoil everything for you. But with the synopsis out of the way, let me dive into my thoughts. I'm sorry in advance if this section isn't concise, but there's a lot I want to say. First, the world building. This manga excels in building a living and breathing world. There's so many areas that make themselves distinct by making magical elements inherent to them. For instance, the Great Hall and it being underwater, or the cave for the second test. Areas like that fill the world with rich history in an expansive world we have yet to fully explore. Of course, wow, that was terrible. Of course, it feels like we're only in the middle of the story, so we haven't seen many areas altogether, but I have hope that we'll see more imaginative and creative areas in the future. On that note, I want to move on to the history for this world. In the story, the banning of forbidden magic is justified by the extremes witches would go to. Medicine and magic being a major example of this because it would severely alter the body's very being, even if it means losing the benefits that come with their union. I personally believe that magic shouldn't be forbidden, the reason being because if a pact can be made to restrict magic, then why can't there be more specific restrictions instead of a general blanket one? Like how in the modern world, certain drugs are banned, but not all drugs are banned. Some have medical purposes, while others are hallucinogenics. Of course, there should still be heavy limitations on forbidden spells, just like how there are for the drugs in our world. That, or at the very least, have certain high-level witches be able to access them, like the wise level or very trusted witches. The Knights of Morales can enforce these constraints as well. There's going to be even more bad actors, so their involvement is more warranted. Let me know what you all think down below. Multiple perspectives are always appreciated. Moving on, this manga's art is some of the best I've seen in a while. There's so much detail sprinkled throughout each chapter that it gets borderline insane. Kamome Shirahama, and excuse me if I'm saying that wrong, has the magic touch, especially when it comes to character designs. Each character has their own flair and personality that shines through in their designs. The paneling though is what enhances the art. Take a look at some of these because it gets crazy. I could recommend this manga off of the visuals alone. For as much personality as the characters and their visuals have, the panels themselves have just as much. The creativity presented in these are refreshing and so fun to admire, especially when you're immersed in a chapter. They carry emotion and weight. This art and how it's presented is half the manga's charm, and I could recommend the manga off of that alone, but the characters themselves are the other half. From the main cast like Kifri and his apprentices, the side characters like Dagda, Mr. Nolna, and Elira, there's so many likable and interesting characters. Of course, this manga isn't breaking the bank with Shakespearean level writing, but that's fine because it's still an engaging and fun read. If you read the manga after this video, let me know if you find a character you like and who it is. For me, my favorite characters are Coco, Kifri, Agate, and Lulucia, but I want to take a second to talk about Coco more specifically. Alright, let's do this in one take. Coco is the spine of this story. Without her involvement, this wouldn't be as good of a story as it is in my opinion. She brings so much life and joy to her group, her superiors, and even her enemies. Every arc, we see Coco flex her creativity and ingenuity as she develops her magical aptitude. She has an outside of the box mentality that surprises even seasoned witches in the story. But best of all, she has a heart. She wants to help others more than she does herself. Even though she has full reason to be selfish for her mother's sake, she isn't. But she's not like that all the time. Like I said, she's tested throughout the story. As much as she loves magic, she's seeing more and more of its dark underbelly. As a kid, she loved the purity and joy that it brought, but now as a witch, she's seeing the pain that it can cause. So she's slowly questioning herself and magic as a whole. The Silver Eye Procession brings us to a boiling point. I like this ongoing development for Coco. It adds nuance to her character by presenting moral challenges for her to solve. Coco is presented with a problem that has layers to it. Of course, she's only 10, so the poor girl gets overwhelmed, but the people around her remind Coco that she finds a middle path when the world says only right or left. She'll find a way as long as she stays true to herself. I feel like she's going to develop a mentality where she views magic as a tool. It's not good or evil, it's just a mechanism available to the world. It's the intent that defines the magic, not the magic itself. Coco makes everyone around her better. There are two examples of this I want to share. The first being Coco and Kifri. Their relationship is the sweetest and goes off without a hitch from the start. Kifri takes care of Coco like his own daughter. He takes her problems on as if they were his own. He cares for all of his students, but it's blatantly clear that he cares for Coco a lot. I won't go too deep into it, but Kifri isn't a clean slate. He has a dark undertone that we see some of, but not a lot throughout the story. But it's clear that Coco makes him a better man. He strives to be a better master for his apprentice's sake and for her sake. They look up to him, so he has to lead by example. Agate, though, is a completely different character after meeting Coco. Like I said, Agate is one of Keyfree's apprentices. She's completely against Coco at the start though, being mean to her, tricking Coco into taking her first apprentice exam, and just lashing out at the new apprentice. Keep in mind, Coco's only ever been nice to her since she got there. I want to stress, Agate is really mean to her at the start. I couldn't see how the author could redeem her, but I knew she was being set up for that. As the story progresses, however, we see Agate's heart melt due to Coco's actions. It takes a while, but she starts warming up to her. This leads to Agate helping her out during the Silver Eye procession when Coco was at her lowest, and even apologizing to the girl. And Coco does not care. What Agate said hurt her, of course, don't get me wrong, but it didn't matter to Coco now. She's seen Agate's passion for magic and her indirect affection towards others and her. Coco knew she was a good person. This didn't change anything for her, but it changed everything for Agate. From this point forward, Agate may as well be Coco's best friend. She's by her side, cheering her on for the rest of the story. And honestly, I'm 100% here for it. It hasn't been long, but those two may as well be sisters now. Overall though, I think this manga is worth the read 100%. I can't rate it fully because it isn't done yet, but I will say right now it's an 8.5 to a 9 out of 10. I'm not a fantasy buff, but I really enjoyed my time with it. While it isn't perfect, my excitement for every chapter heavily outweighed the negatives, which to be honest, there weren't many if any at all. For the anime, I hope that they can capture the pure creativity I mentioned earlier. Since these two are two different mediums, I know it won't be the same, but if the studio behind this production can translate the manga's unique style into a unique anime style, I see that as a successful adaptation. It also can get dark, so I hope it's taken seriously and handled with care. The nuanced and introspective moments that characters have add layers to the interactions, so I hope they're respected in the anime. But if I'm being honest, I have a lot of hope, so I'm not even worried. I'm super excited for this adaptation, and I'm so glad that I have read ahead of its release. This manga deserves its spot in the fantasy trio. Let me know what you think down below. There's a bunch of stuff I missed, so it's always appreciated to see comments covering anything of that nature. Thank you all for watching as always. This has been Infamous Isaac, and until next time, I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.
Let's talk. Let's not talk.